Andrew, today we're talking about successful commercialization and some of the constraints, the specific constraints that go into being successful in that way.
We should also talk about what not to do, which is high likelihood of not being commercially successful. Because I don't think any of us are going on a product development journey not trying to be successful.
The nice thing about being in this position is we've seen a lot of what does work and what doesn't work.
And what doesn't work is typically similar, and what does work is also the same. And so there's some patterns that have emerged over the years of doing product development, and that leads to certain insights as to these are the bits of the problem that you need to solve first, and these are bits of the problem that you might need to solve later.
There are definitely elements that repeat themselves with both success and with failures.
Hopefully more success than failure.
That's our job. Commercialization can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, like going from design to concept to commercialization. But what does that mean?
Commercialization is a multifaceted word, especially in the context of product development. The ultimate goal is to build a commercially viable venture. And so in medtech, that typically means delivering a product or a service that provides a treatment, that some little diagnostic that makes people's lives better. But where you're at on that commercialization journey, and the commercialization means a lot different things depending on where you're at. Are you early stage, trying to get proof of concept and say ready yourself for the beginning of commercialization? If you're still doing iterative R&D cycles, you're probably not yet on commercialization. And so the first bit of commercialization would be proving to the market that you have a device that is going to be effective. A lot of our customers, the first step on the commercialization journey is receiving market authorization, perhaps a 510K approval on a Class 2 device. But that's just the first step of the commercialization journey. The next step might be readying the product for mass production, building out a sales channel, building out a sales function, figuring out how you're going to get your device into the hands of people. And so I think for a lot of product development people, we think that commercialization ends when the product's done. But in my opinion, that's just the start of the journey. You need to figure out all the next steps of, hey, we've built this thing, how do we get customers to come into the door?
There's lots of ingredients that go into being commercially successful. Where are times where someone doesn't have that locked down?
You don't need to make your internal proof of concept pretty. It doesn't need to be manufacturable. It just needs to work. And so the companies that we've worked with that we've seen success on have understood their core IP. Maybe they're using a 3D printed enclosure with a Raspberry Pi and a whole bunch of wires and duct tape cobbled together. That's a-okay. Cortex can help you with all the pieces that go from taking that as a proof of concept and turning it into a commercialized product. But if that thing doesn't work reliably, then we start getting into research and development cycles, and that becomes really expensive at a service provider. Now, if you've got the pockets for that, great. But if you're early stage and you're wanting to show that you can get this idea further into or further along the development process, I think you need to be capital efficient and do that work internally and not outsource that work. And so when you do have that reliable proof of concept, benchtop, whatever you want to call it, prototype, in my opinion, that's a good time to start having conversations with service providers and not before.
When you look at what is required on the payment side, what are some of the elements that really need to be de-risked early?
Just because you build it, you can't guarantee that they're going to come.
What are some of the things that guarantee that they will come?
MedTech, clear reimbursement pathway, especially in the US market, understanding how you're going to get paid and understanding how much you can get paid under current billing codes. We are working with a customer and we're looking to understand the total cost of a single-use disposable diagnostic because the reimbursement's limited. I believe it's $60, total reimbursement. So if your cost of goods sold is 10, is that going to be enough? What if at 20, at $30, when you've got all that additional overhead? So understanding how you can potentially make money on your product, what the constraints of the money are going to be, you need to be able to understand that to know why your product is going to exist. Like that is a core constraint that needs to be solved for and needs to be considered in the product development. If it costs $55 to make and you're only going to get $60, that's probably not a viable commercial venture.
Many of the medical devices that we're working on have solutions already in the marketplace. So when you're faced with that, what is it that allows you to be successful in the marketplace?
If you're taking the 510K approach and you're able to identify a predicate, great. The regulatory pathway, it can be more streamlined versus de novo or a PMA approach. A predicate just gives you the boxes that you need to check. It says that it needs to deliver treatment in a similar way. It gives you an outline of what kind of electrical and compliance and safety testing you're going to have to do. It gives you an idea of what the user needs might be for a device. But just because you've copied someone, you don't necessarily have your own special sauce. So are you cheaper? Are you simplifying a workflow pain point? Are you making the treatment better? In the case of therapy medical, that special sauce was moving the treatment to the baby rather than an overhead light. And so that was enough of a differentiator to build a venture around. I think understanding what your reason for being is, what your special differentiator is, the predicate device will give you the table stakes, things you have to do, but won't guarantee commercial success unless you've identified why people are going to care. Why should people care about the product that you're building, and how does it make their lives better? Answer for those within the context of, can I build it? Can I build it cheap enough? I know how to sell it. That then leads to, hopefully, a successfully commercial venture.
I think there's something to be said for making sure that the partners that you're working with are also happy in a product development venture. So think about like the stakeholders, the service providers, the people that we pay money to as well, having to satisfy their own business models. Can you think about how that works into the service providers that we choose?
The way that we select service providers typically boils down to, can we build a relationship with them? Because when you build a relationship with a service provider, you're more than just a line item. You are someone doing good work together. And in my experience, when you have that relationship, you can potentially ask for a favor. You can say, I really need this quote. Can you turn it around tomorrow? Or, hey, can you shuffle your schedule? I need to get into the EMC chamber next week. Or the ability to do that is based on relationships. And so if we find a service provider who provides a really personalized level of service, that aligns with our ethos of how we want to engage with our customers, and it allows us to accelerate development, allows us to solve problems, and when things do go wrong, it allows us to have a solution-focused conversation rather than just pointing the finger.
Hopefully, our clients have something that's tangible and it's not just wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking is great, but wishful doesn't make you dollars. One core lesson that I've learned in developing products is you can't fight physics.
What do you mean by that?
It means that the immutable laws of the universe is a constraint that you cannot change.
Like thermodynamics?
Absolutely. We had a previous project where we had constraints on a cooling system, and we had constraints on how big the solution could be. It needed to be portable, and it needed to be battery powered. And unfortunately, those constraints were at odds with each other. Being able to put enough batteries to cool effectively meant that it was too heavy, or if it was light enough, then it wouldn't cool effectively. And so we had a over-constrained equation. We could not solve for it. We needed to relax one of those constraints to be able to deliver something that actually worked in the real world. And so understanding what constraints to relax, understanding what product requirements are sacred and what have flexibility, making sure you make the right decisions there is critical to your product and critical to your development journey.
How do you make those decisions though? Like how do you eventually work those trade-offs in?
Every medical device that I've seen that's been successful has been a compromise of constraints, and that you can't design something perfect for every single stakeholder. whether it be the patient or the healthcare provider or the payer or whoever the stakeholder might be, you need to understand what their user needs are, what their particular challenges are, what they're considering product success. And when you understand that for each of the different stakeholders in the product, that allows you to start synthesizing the constraints that actually matter and the constraints that could potentially be relaxed. Because ultimately, every great medical device is a compromise. It's not perfect for every single stakeholder, but it's perfect enough that all of them are happy.
I think that's a really great example of something where we have to identify when we have an unsolvable set of constraints. When do you know when we've had that level of unsolvable constraints? The formula just doesn't work.
I think we try to identify what constraints and challenges we're going to be up against in the early phase of a project during discovery and definition, and then we attest those assumptions in later project phases. To me, the more things you build, the more of your ideas you get off the computer and into the real world, the faster that you're going to uncover some of those constraints, the faster you're going to fail, and ultimately you're going to be able to develop a solution around them. And so whether you're working with a service provider or you're doing development internally, you have to be able to build things and you have to get your hands dirty, and things are going to break and things are going to be messy, but that's part of the journey. That's great. Because every great plan I've ever seen has never gone according to plan.
That's pretty good. Nailed it. Good stuff.